Okay, thanks everyone for joining us and good evening. This is tonight's hybrid meeting, meaning it's live streamed and also presented live in person. So we're going to have this presentation with the Los Alamos Mountaineers. Before we get started, I want to make sure everyone's aware that the presentation is being recorded. My name is Beth Portwright. I'm the operations manager at the Pajarito Environmental Education Center, or PEAC, here in Los Alamos, New Mexico. And I'll be the moderator for tonight's talk. I want to first acknowledge our wonderful members, our donors, for their generous support, and also our partners like the Los Alamos Mountaineers. For more details about other PEAC programs coming up, you can visit peaknature.org. Just a couple logistics for the presentation before we get started. Our presenter will be taking questions via Zoom chat and from our in-person audience. So for those of you watching from home, you can find the chat feature in the Zoom app menu bar. Type your questions to the one that says Peak Moderator and has Beth in parentheses in the chat window anytime during the talk, and I'll read them during the Q&A at the end. Please remember that not everyone in the room, here in the room can have a microphone, so there may be a delay when we're listening to the question from the live audience. But don't worry, we'll be back on in a second, and we'll repeat that question for everyone to hear. After the talk, you'll get a short evaluation in your email. Please do take a moment to fill that out. Your input really helps us to improve our future programs. And without any more delay, I will pass it over to Sylvie to start the Mountaineers meeting.
Thank you, Beth. All right, welcome everybody in here and on Zoom. Thanks for being here. The agenda today, we'll hear from Clarissa about our Mountaineers membership, quick overview. Ellen Mills will review bylaws, highlights. I'll do the trip report. Jean is not able to make it. And then we'll hear the main presentation from Toni. In the fall, for the Mountaineers is when we think about the next year. So we are preparing we're assembling the nominating committee that will identify candidates for next year's officers for the Mountaineers. And so tonight, I'm speaking for Evan Rose, who's the chair of the nominating committee, and of course is playing again. No, but he'll be back tomorrow. And so I'll pass on names that I collect today. So we would like 3 Mountaineers members that are not on the board to please volunteer to be on the nominating committee. So assemble the slate of candidates for next year's officers. So 3 of you, talk to me afterward. We can get this going. I think it's about 2 hours worth. We have suggestions of name already. It's not like you have to cold call. It's about, yes, making a call, making sure the person is up for being a candidate for a position, an officer position next year, and then give that to Evan to assemble so that we can vote, we present that slate to you in October and vote on it here in November. All right, so nominating committee for next year's officer for the Mountaineers. I have a note card. I'll take names. On your way out, I'll be at the door. You can't escape. I know the 2 exits. So, and then for those online, you can email me if you are interested in both nominating committee or being an officer for next year. I'll say it now. I don't know how else to do it. sylvieadam01@gmail. But you can get through us via our website. Let's see, I have another pitch before I give it to Clarissa. Russ Lemons has a set of USGS and US Forest Service topo maps of northern New Mexico that he's willing to part with. So he's here in the room. If you're interested in talking to him about maps he's passing on, talk to Russ. Here we go, he's raising his hand. Thanks, Ross, for sharing your stuff. And I think that's it. Clarissa, are you up? I'll take it back afterward.
All right. Next slide. All right. So membership. So I sorted I took this over from Sylvie, who did this last year, and she had started cleaning up our roster some. So I have now cleaned our roster up. I've saved some people back to like 2021. So if you're out there and you haven't been a member since 2021, it'll be really easy for you to join again. Hint, hint. And but right now I'm showing you 2023 because your membership lasts for 1 year from the date when you pay us. So there are still some people from 2023, and I know a lot of people renew at the Potpourri, which will be coming up in December. So that's why 23 is still up there, and 2024. So I didn't make a total, but that's about 250 people. So my wonderful husband made this map for me of zip codes of where everybody lives. And I think it's fun because we do have some members across the country, although most of us are located in northern New Mexico. And zooming into northern New Mexico, most of us are located in, Los Alamos. So I thought this was fun just to show, our membership is diverse from across the country and from across northern New Mexico. It doesn't matter where you live, you can still participate with us. And I think that is it for me then. Renew your membership today. Sylvie. So I do try to send them out. So if you haven't gotten something from me this year yet, you're not due yet. So I think I'm up to date. I've sent notices out until the end of October now. Sylvie.
President is due, but not overdue. I don't think so. I will move the slides for Ellen to do her bylaws pitch. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ellen Mills, and I'm currently on the board as the secretary. And my job is to give you an overview, promise it will be brief, of the bylaws for this evening. So we're going to start with a little history. The next slide, please. The club started originally in late 1952, and those were people who were interested in climbing. Big surprise. The first president was Tom Newton, and the first treasurer was Ken Ewing. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Some of you in this room may have known those two individuals, but they were our essentially founding officers. And the mission is to teach and promote the safe practice of and enjoyment of mountaineering, rock climbing, and all sorts of other kinds of activities. And that mission continues from day one. So there's a little bit of homework for you. Won't take long. It is recommended that the members read through the bylaws once a year, and the bylaws are posted on the club website under membership, and then you go to executive board and scroll down a little bit. That document, which is Constitution of Bylaws, is only just over 4 pages long, so it's not a big homework assignment. And go ahead and the next slide. The bylaws contain these 6 articles. So our meetings, as we're having this evening, elections, which are coming up, and the process for carrying out the elections, how we choose our officers and the board. And then the board has the responsibility of overseeing the finances of the club, which are at a minimum. So those guidelines are in there. So there are also, so if you go back to the officers in the board, when you read those bylaws, that will give you an opportunity to see what does it take to become an officer, and then what would be your responsibilities. So that's a good piece if you're considering moving into an officer or board position. We're looking for people. That gives you a good idea of, okay, what am I getting myself into? And then if we go down to the trip guidelines, that includes a section on becoming a trip leader. And so we have several people that have done. Bill Podorski is our major star here, who has done many, many trips for the club. And that's actually kind of a fun thing to do. But again, you might want to see what's expected of a trip leader. And after that are the trip guidelines. So participating in any of these various activities or trips, some of them are longer term, and you're going to see that probably in Toni's presentation tonight. What does it mean if you're a participant? So there are expectations if you're going on a trip and what you should be doing and maybe what you shouldn't be doing. So you might want to take a look at that as well. And then there is a small section on amendments. The board works on amendments and then those get approved by the membership. So that's basically what is in the bylaws. And take a look. It's interesting reading and it doesn't take very long.
Well done. Thank you, Ellen. So yeah, our board meets once a month, typical. You can look at the different position on our website, and I'll move on. So after being Evan, I'll be Jean. Okay, the trip report since our last meeting here. Ellen did her Monday night at Pajarito. It's getting wild, Ellen. Okay. The sun through the trees. Very nice. Thanks for having a nice, consistent run this year, Ellen. Okay, let's see. I have extra notes from Jean. Okay, not yet. So the top roping sessions, again, look at our calendar on our lamountaineers.org website. There'll be one more Monday night if you've wanted to go. Since Ellen started this and Bill, next Monday will be the last one for this year. So, and Ellen's going to be overseas, so Patty Walls will lead that last one. And then we kept saying, perhaps the last Llama trips in October, led by Bill Podorsky. That's right. We get to drop the maybe the last, which is wonderful. Is there room on this year's?
We're in final planning.
Final planning, kind of late. Okay. Have fun. And then a new trip by Anne Satsangi and Clarissa Jablinski in the Bisti Badland, an overnighter. Where are they? Where are you? Okay, good. Thank you. Have fun. Is it a full moon or not a full moon? Okay, close enough. Close enough. And it is a full moon. In the Badlands. Okay. Very good. Excellent. It was great. Last year was such a fun. They had two groups, right, Michael? So thank you for putting this on again. Oh, I'm leading on October 19th the combined LAM and Peak hike. We're going to go to Rosie's Point. So let me know if you're interested. You can sign up via the Peak website. Bill's going to Moab for 8 days in November. Is that full? There's room for the Moab Bike Hike Explore trip with Bill. And then Bill has a Bluff, Utah in December. Thank you, Bill. Okay, I think this is where I say what did not make our list is Tim Rennick on Saturday, September 28th. So this coming up is going to Trampas Lake. Where are you, Tim? All right, good. Fun hike. And then Bill has posted, so you can find the information, a spring 2025 Llama trip, which makes this year's not the last one. And that's going to be April 19th through the 30th. Excellent. Way to go. Local volunteer opportunities, September Trail Day, it will be September 28th. Uh-oh, Tim, competition. Go on Tim's trip. And then you can volunteer later for Trails Day. Okay. Did I miss anything? I think that's it. We have minutes away, 2 new members, putting you on the spot. Welcome. They're gonna join as soon as they get home. Welcome, welcome. Let's see. Wilderness First Aid 2-day course is coming back here at Peak in November. If anyone wants to renew their card or take the course for the first time. It's solo coming. Is it solo?
Yes, it'll be solo presenting that again this year. It's a 2-day course. It's like 8 to 5 both those days, Saturday and Sunday, that first weekend in November. And I think it's available for registration on the Peak website. And if you have any more questions about it, I'm happy to answer those. A lot of us, including Sylvie and Jean and many people in the room, have taken this course a couple times already, every 2 years. And so, and we usually do this each year, that first weekend of November. So watch out for that. And yeah, come certify with us if you'd like.
Yeah, it's a great course. Oh, too soon. Okay, that's it for the announcements. Again, I'll be waiting for you right at the door. Volunteer, help us. And so I'm passing out to Anne to introduce our main presenter.
All right. Hello, I'm Ann Satsangi. I'm one of the program chairs on this year's board, working together with Juliana. Our job is to put together these programs, to find the speakers, line up each month's speakers, as well as the coming December potpourri set of talks. So this is another board job. So, and as usual, I'll put our usual plug out there. If you have something exciting, interesting, informative to share with the membership that you'd like to give a talk on, please reach out to us. We are filling up the calendar for 2025, and we're looking for plenty of interesting information there. So I will now go to introduce Toni Taylor. Toni is a longtime resident here in Los Alamos, a recent retiree from Los Alamos National Laboratory. She loves to do everything outdoors. The whole list was hiking, biking, camping, skiing, many things. And she also, in addition to what we'll hear today of the Colorado Centennials, has climbed all over the world, Wyoming, Montana, the Centennials here, but also places like Ecuador and a long list. So she has also been an active member of the Mountaineers and served on the board. It feels like we are really pushing the board, so if you're interested, sure. But Toni has served the last several years in various positions as secretary, vice president, president, and then even past president, which is a position as well. So without further ado, I will hand it off to Toni to hear about the Centennials of Colorado.
Okay, I don't need that. I've got this, I think. So can people hear me? Is this working? Okay, great, good. Okay, so this is an adventure or a series of adventures climbing the Centennial Peaks of Colorado that I've done not just with myself, but with a number of people, both from the Mountaineers, but a lot of them with my husband, Stuart Trugman. So, and the picture here is a picture of the peaks up in Vestal Basin, Arrow Peak, Vestal Peak, and a couple of the Trinities. So this is just a bit of background. The Centennials are nominally the 100 top ranked peaks in Colorado. 53 of them are 14ers, and so the highest of which is Mount Elbert, the lowest of which, number 53, is Sunshine Peak. These are ranked peaks, so they have to be 300 feet above. If there's a near neighbor, there has to be 300 feet from the saddle. And so actually, I think 2021, they redid measurement of the peaks using a technique called LIDAR. And a couple of things changed within the 14ers. Challenger Peak, which was ranked, became unranked. In other words, the saddle was higher than they thought. And North Maroon, which actually might surprise people, was unranked, became ranked at number 48. So there are actually 5 unranked peaks that are on the maps. And so when people say they climbed the 14ers, often they mean that they've climbed all 58 of those. There are an additional 15 peaks that are sub-peaks that aren't on maps, but are high points over 14,000 feet. So the Centennials, even though it says the top 100, it's the top 101 because there is a tie for number 100. The highest is Grizzly Peak, and almost a 14er, but not. And then the tie for 100 and 101 is Trinity Peak, which is in Vestal Basin, and Niagara Peak. Now those two, with this new shuffling and remeasuring of the peaks, used to not be Centennials. They got promoted, and two actually very difficult Centennials, Tea Kettle and Dallas, which have technical parts to them, got demoted. Arrow Peak also got promoted. Unfortunately, I was in the middle of climbing these when this reevaluation happened. I had climbed Tea Kettle and Dallas. I hadn't climbed Trinity and Arrow, so I had 5 peaks left. All of a sudden, I had 7 peaks left. That wasn't very much fun. So a little bit of background. There's something called the Colorado 14er Initiative, which actually is redoing all the trails up to the 14ers. And so climbing a 14er, a lot of them you really are just climbing, not just, but you are climbing a trail to the top. And you can see actually right here, you know, some of the this is actually a trail that was just redone by the 14ers Initiative. It's on Shavano. It's a very nice trail. So if you're doing 14ers, you're probably, not always, but probably most of the time on pretty nice trails. But you're also there with a lot of people. So in 2023, there were 260,000 day users for the 14ers. On the other hand, if you're doing the Centennials, I don't think any of them have a trail to the top. There are trails partway, but this actually shows maybe a little bit extreme, but it shows the kind of thing that you are going to be hiking on a Centennial. A lot of talus, a lot of scree, not a lot of trails, especially towards the top. You also aren't going to see a lot of people. You might see a couple of people. So it's really much more of a wilderness experience and much more of, you know, real mountaineering. So for me, I started climbing the 14ers with Stuart in 1984. My first 14er was Long's Peak, which is not one of the easier 14ers. We finished them, both Stuart and I, in 2002 with Culebra, which is one that you have to actually pay to climb. We also had to wait a couple years because it's privately owned, and the peak was being transferred from one person to the other. We then reclimbed a lot of them, not all of them, with our children through about 2009. And in 2010, we decided maybe we should try something different instead of reclimbing all the 14ers, and started climbing the Centennials. So I think this hopefully shows up. This kind of gives you a sense of where the Centennials are. There's the Front Range Centennials, which includes a couple in Rocky Mountain National Park. There's the Mosquito Range, or 10 Mile Range, kind of near Leadville. There's the Sawatch Range, which includes the Collegiate Peaks, the Elks around Aspen, the San Grey de Cristos, and the San Juans. So kind of all over the state, at least in the western part, and more in the southern part than the northern part. And here you can see a bit more clearly the peaks in the San Juans. And here I think you can see a little more clearly at least the Front Range peaks, as well as some of the Mosquito Range peaks. So if you're going to do the Centennials, you really do need to be prepared, because just get on a trail and hike, and there aren't a lot of people to help you. A couple of the references that I've found really useful are Roach's Roach, the Jerry Roach and Jennifer Roach's book on the Colorado 13ers that gives, you know, a description of all of them. You know, it tells you how to get to the trailhead. It tells you the different routes and gives you a sense of how hard they are. I would say that Roach does tend to sandbag his routes. In other words, they're probably a little bit harder than he's mentioning. If he says something is 2+, for example, expect at least a little bit of scrambling. The other reference that is really useful is this website, 14ers.com. So for a lot of the for all of the 14ers and a lot of the Centennials, but not all of them, you can get route descriptions with pictures, which are very useful, especially once you get off trail. It's not true for all of them. So if there isn't a route description, you can look at trip reports, and that kind of can tell you how to get up the peak. Sometimes there's some misinformation, and we've had that happen to us a couple of times. You also get information about current conditions, about the conditions of trailheads, and a lot of useful information on that site. The other thing that one needs to do in terms of being prepared is that because there's so many people, this is kind of doing something weird. Because there's so many people climbing, both the 14ers and the Centennials, and just in the backcountry, Colorado has limited access somewhat. So if you want to do something around the Aspen area, so the Maroon Bells, for example, you need to reserve a campsite on recreation.com. You also need to reserve a parking space, and all of this needs to be done way in advance because they sell out. If you want to climb Culebra or Red Mountain, you need to reserve that way in advance. It's a private property, and they only let a few people, you know, on the order of 20 people up 3 days a week during the summer. There are a number of other places where you really do need to do things in advance. For example, the train that takes you to Chicago Basin or to the trailhead to Chicago Basin is limiting the number of people, that number of backpackers that would get off at Needleton. So really being prepared is more than just knowing your trail. It's really making reservations in advance. So now I'm going to just show a few peak highlights of the more recent peaks that we've climbed in the past few years. But just a couple of things I wanted to, a couple of quotes that I thought were important that kind of describe both the peaks and the adventures and how I approach them now. So the first one is from Edward Abbey in Desert Solitaire. May your trails be crooked, winding, lonesome, dangerous, leading to the most amazing view. May your mountains rise into and above the clouds. I think that's kind of describes at least the Centennials mostly, and hopefully you make it so that they're not too dangerous. The second is from Ed Visteur's No Shortcuts to the Top. He climbed all the 8,000 meter peaks. Getting to the top is optional, getting down is mandatory. So there have been a number of times when we've turned around because the conditions weren't right or we weren't feeling right. Okay, so I'm going to start with a relatively straightforward peak, Mount Ouray, which is when you are going up Route 285 in Colorado and you go over the pass to Salida. You'll see this peak. It's a very nice peak. I climbed it with Daniel, my son, in 2019. And this is actually it was actually the 4th of July. So the route, there are a number of routes up it, but the route that we took went up this way. And oh, by the way, these maps that I'm showing are maps that came from Roach's book, so they're actually quite useful. So just a few photographs. This first one basically shows the mountain. You start off on sort of kind of a trail, not a supported trail by the Forest Service, but the rest of it is just free walking, bushwhacking. There's not a lot of bushes though. It's on grass first, but this ridge is all talus. And so you can kind of see the talus. I'm kind of right here picking through it. The pictures here are from Daniel because he was way ahead of me. Here you can see approaching the summit and Daniel on the summit. One thing in terms of this peak is I actually fell coming down. I was walking too fast because I was trying to keep up with my son, who's very fast. But I had, as you can see, hiking poles, and I had them around the wrists, around my wrists. And so when I fell, the hiking poles, I was falling in this talus here. My poles got stuck in the talus, and so I really couldn't protect my face, and so I had a really bad cut on my forehead that I had to go to the emergency room. So since then, I actually, sometimes I still use the loops around my wrists, but I really think about it. Do I need them? If I were to lose them, and they're going to fall several hundred feet, I'm going to keep the loops on probably, but that's not the case. I don't, and I think that's something that you may want to think about if you're using hiking poles. The next one I'm going to talk about is Gladstone Peak. And this is actually near Telluride. And this particular peak, we didn't use the regular route. We went from Cross Mountain Trailhead up to where you see Lizard Head, and then down into Bilk Basin and up this face. Now that's actually not a route that is shown in Roach's book, for example, but a number of people had done it, and we thought that the normal route, which actually goes along the ridge here, is quite dangerous. It's loose, and at least one mountaineer has hurt himself pretty badly there. So I climbed this with Stuart, and these are some of the pictures. This is hiking up on a very nice trail up to the bottom of Lizard Head. This actually shows the route, and I can show you here. You kind of go up this, and then up, and you get on the snow. This was again around the 4th of July, and then up on some rocks, and then climb up the last part of the ridge. I thought it was pretty hard. Stuart, I had crampons. This is very steep here. I had crampons, and I was sort of okay, although the snow was softening as we came down. Stuart had microspikes and actually fell, and fortunately was able to arrest himself with an ice axe, but it was pretty scary for a little bit. When I got down, I was pretty happy to be down, so I was kind of kissing the ground, which I've done a couple of times. And this is a picture on the summit, and in back of me is Mount Wilson and El Diante. Those are two 14ers, and actually Norbert had asked me, Norbert and Evan were going to climb I think Mount Wilson, and wanted a picture of the snow. Okay, so the next one is Mount Meeker. This is actually in Rocky Mountain National Park. So we actually did a backpack to a sort of high camp and went from there. Rocky Mountain National Park, you have to make reservations. So that's another place where you have to be prepared. We did not take the normal route, which actually goes up through, it starts at the same place you'd start to climb Longs, but rather we did a route through Wild Basin and actually did a camp at along the trail to Sand Beach Lake near Hunters Creek. And then we climbed up basically up the southwest ridge to Mount Meeker. So this is our campsite, very nice campsite. You know, you had to reserve it in advance. We hiked up to that early in the day, and we're able to hike up and look at Sand Beach Lake. It's very pretty, and you can actually reserve campsites there too. And then you hike up this trail up Hunters Creek and it's trail in quotes. It's not a supported trail, so it's one of the ones where, you know, they're fallen logs and you can lose the trail pretty easily. You hike up, you hike up to this meadow, and you can see the peak up here. And then these are some of the views. Stewart on the peak. There was a fire nearby, and a lot of times you have smoke high up because there are a lot of fires. And then this is actually a photo of Long's Peak from Mount Meeker. Okay, so Jagged. Jagged was a really hard peak for us to climb. We actually had 4 tries before we made it to the summit, and we have to really thank Ron Morgan, who helped us on 3 of those and finally helped us get to the summit. It's a very serious backpack, and we actually did it 2 different ways. You can take a train into Needleton, and then you take a train into Needleton, and then you go up this no-name approach. That is again a totally unsupported trail. So you are going over logs. I think more recently there have been a couple of avalanches. So it really is a hard trek. And I think it's about 20 miles that way, round trip. We actually were more successful going from the Vallecito trailhead. So it's a longer hike. It's about 35 miles round trip. Part of it is on a very nice trail, but part of it is on an unsupported trail. And then at the very end, there's some technical climbing. So this actually shows a couple of things. When we finally were successful, Ron called me on Thursday and said, let's do it on Saturday. And I said, okay. Because you want a really good weather window. We had really a lot of rain right before we went, and so this particular route up Vallecito has several stream crossings. This one used to have a bridge, but no longer has a bridge, so you have to wade across it yourself. When we did it, the water came up to my thighs. And actually, this picture here shows Ron on another one of the bridges that you had to cross. This was actually up Sunlight Creek. It's pretty scary because you're pretty high above the water. This particular picture shows us close to our high camp. You can actually see a lot of the peaks from Chicago Basin as well as Sunlight Lake. And then here is some of the wildlife we saw. And in fact, in this basin and in a lot of places around the San Juans, there are a lot of marmots. You have to be careful about those. They'll eat your poles, they'll eat your food. And in fact, Ron had kind of a war with one of the marmots, throwing his hiking poles at this little guy. I'm not sure who won in the end, but it was amusing. So this actually shows a picture of Jagged from our camp. It's a really beautiful camp. And kind of the route up it is kind of circuitous. You go up, you get kind of close to a big couloir, but not in it. Then you go across, and then you go on the backside to finally make the summit. As I said, this is technical. So this picture here shows what's called the first crux, where you rope up. This picture here shows the second crux, or at least part of it. And there's Ron rappelling, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. This is actually a picture of where we came up from the second crux. This is a summit photo of Stuart and I, and a summit photo of Ron. When we got to the summit, we rappelled down, and we actually did that in 2 steps. The first step down to a ledge, the second step down to this second crux, which was very nice because then we didn't have to down climb. Unfortunately, at the ledge, Ron went down first. And while I was going down, he said, "Hey, Toni, I forgot my pack." And then he said, "Okay, we'll just have Stuart put it on the rope so we can pull it down after Stuart comes down." So that's what we did. And this isn't really Ron's fault. We should all be looking out for each other. So we all take responsibility for this. So when Stuart gets down, he's the last person down, we try to pull the pack, and it won't come, and it won't come, and it won't come, and it won't come. So finally, Ron, and you couldn't even climb up to it because it was on this ledge. So Ron Jumar'd up it and got the pack and came back down, which probably took about 2 hours, which is why I was able to sit there and take photos of the anyway, it was a great climb. It was really fun, but a lot of work. So the next peak I'm going to talk about is one that I did with a guide, ultimately, although Stuart and I tried it a couple of times. This is Cathedral Peak. It is in the Elk Range, kind of near Castle, if anyone knows that range. And the issue with this peak is it's got a very steep couloir, which is best climbed in snow. But you can't just climb it in snow because you've got to be very careful. By the time, if you do it kind of in the May time frame where you still have snow there, but you can get up to a high camp on a trail without snow, you got to get down by 9, because the snow will get very soft, and you won't be able to, your crampons won't hold, and B, the rocks that will come down into this couloir and could potentially injure you. And I know that I actually just talked to someone a couple of weeks ago who did it and got down at about 10, and he said he slipped and he fell about a couple hundred feet. So it is true. Stuart and I tried it a couple of times, and I turned us back because I think I got myself so nervous about this that I really wasn't feeling up to climbing it. So I decided that I really wanted to finish these, and the only way I was going to do it was with a guide. So I hired a guide from Aspen Expeditions, Nate, and he was really good. I highly recommend both Aspen Expeditions and San Juan Expeditions as guide services. So here's a nice trail that you can walk up. This is actually the Cathedral Creek. It's a very pretty trail, and up to about the lake, depending on the year, you don't have a whole lot of snow. But once you get above the lake, and actually here's the lake, it can be all snow. It can also be talus. It's actually nicer, at least in the lower part, if it's snow. Let me tell you. This is actually the couloir that you go up. not this one, which is less steep, but this one, because you got to go up this ridge afterwards. So here's what you do after you get up the couloir. And I guess here's me on the summit. Okay, Turret Peak. So Turret Peak it doesn't seem like it's that hard, but the approach is really hard. So if you look in Roach's book, there are two ways to approach Turret Peak. There's something called the Ruby Creek approach, which is actually, Ron actually once talked about it when he heard we were going up it. He said, that's the worst trail I've ever been on. It's very steep. It's got a lot of fallen logs, which you have to crawl under, climb over, whatever. And there's at least one place where Stuart and I climbed this with Stuart, got there, and it took us a half hour to figure out where you went from there. The trail was so poorly defined. So you can either go up this Ruby Creek Trail, which is actually somewhat longer, or you can go up North Pigeon Creek. The problem is North Pigeon Creek is really a bushwhack, and it's a real bushwhack. It's there's no trail after this this intersection here. So this is what the trail looks like to begin with. It's not too bad. It gets worse and worse as you go up it. And then when you get to the intersection, you're just tramping across whatever. Here's a typical terrain. You can see you're on the edge of several canyons, so you're sometimes walking across very steep terrain. When you finally get up there, though, it's very nice. So here's the campsite. Here's our little tent, and so from there, you actually climb the peak. So this is the route. You basically go up onto this grass, and then you get onto a very steep scree slope. You can't really see Turret from the campsite. This is actually at the top of the scree slope. You can finally see the peak that you have to go over, and you actually have to climb over the backside of this to get up to the peak. This is Stuart on the summit, and this is actually a picture of the other Centennial, Pigeon Peak, which is right next to Turret. Pigeon is slightly harder to climb, but not a lot harder, and we had climbed it previously. Okay. Oh, the other thing I want to say is this particular climb, the backpack was so hard that in the end, Stuart's feet were just totally full of blisters, and he was not really able to walk for a while, or walk very far for a while. Okay, Emerald Peak. So Emerald is perhaps one of the easier Centennials, and this one is in the Sawatch Range. I climbed it with Ron Morgan and Olivia Lee in August of 2023, but I had also climbed it solo in 2017, and actually climbed Iowa, which is a sub-peak, at the same time. So this was actually a trip that Norbert organized, and basically what you did was you went up Missouri Basin, and Missouri Basin has a number of 14ers, Oxford, Missouri, Belford, but if you keep going up that basin and you head over Elkhead Pass, you can climb Emerald Peak, which is what we did. And you can see this is actually a picture of Emerald Peak after you go over Elkhead Pass. So a few pictures. Here's our little campsite in the basin. Here is a picture of us climbing the peak, and you can see the pass over here. A lot of the walking up to the pass and over the pass is on a trail, but once you get over the pass, you're walking first on grass with no trail, but you finally get up to the ridge and you're on a lot of talus. Let's see, this is our summit photo, and this is another photo of, I think, Ron walking back, and I believe that these two pictures were taken by Olivia. Let's see, one thing I wanted to say is you can see some of the peaks. So this is, I think, Oxford and Belford. And back here, this is Iowa, and this is Missouri. And again, I think this is Belford. So nice views from this peak. Hagerman. So Hagerman was one of the ones that I still had to climb in 2023 to finish the Centennials. I really wanted to finish them then. It's not a real hard peak, but at that point, Stuart was not really able to climb peaks, and I didn't want to go alone, so I went again with this guide from Aspen Expeditions, Nate. You also need to be able to, the trailhead is basically four-wheel drive unless you want to walk a long time on a road, which I didn't want to do. So we actually did this in a way that we walked up one way, so the North Fork of the Crystal River, and actually camped where the trail ended for us. It was actually a trail that you do when you do the when you circumvent the Maroon Bells Trail Riders Pass, and then we came down through Geneva Lake. Sorry. So very nice trail, at least to begin with. This is where we camped. The campsite was, I would say, quite suboptimal. This was not a very nice place to put a tent, but we were pretty high up, which was good. This actually shows the beginning of the off-trail hiking, and at first it's on sort of grassy stuff, not too bad. And this is actually Geneva Lake, which I might recommend if one was doing this, just camping at Geneva Lake, because it's so pretty. As you get higher and higher, you're going through more and more of this talus stuff. So you can see me here picking through it. Getting up to the ridge, to the summit ridge, it's all this junky talus. And you can actually see this is coming down, and this is actually Nate a little bit ahead of me. This is the summit photo. This lake here is Snowmass Lake, because you're right next to Snowmass Peak. And in fact, this is Snowmass Peak from the summit. So very nice views. You also get very nice views of the Maroon Bells. So this is kind of my final peaks. So this is Vestal, Arrow, and the Trinities. So these are really gorgeous peaks. You have to get up to Vestal Basin, which is quite a hike. And Stuart and I had climbed Vestal, actually up Wham Ridge with, which is technical. It goes at 5.4, with a guide from San Juan Expeditions, Cam, who was also great. We did that in August 2022, but then I still had to climb Arrow and Trinity to actually complete the Centennials. So those were my last two. And I climbed those in September 2023 with another guide. I tried to get Cam. He wasn't available. I got this guy, Travis. Travis was fantastic. He has guided Kilimanjaro. He has guided, guides all over Colorado, but he's guided Kilimanjaro. He's guided in Europe. He's guided Mont Blanc. He's just a really fantastic mountaineer and a really great guy to kind of hang out with too. So just a little bit of a background. You come in on a train, so you can actually see the train. This is the train coming from Durango. These are actually a couple of through hikers because the first trail, the trail that you go on is part of the Colorado Trail. And actually this is me on the first part of the trail. Very nice trail. And you hike up to this place called the Beaver Pond, which is right there. And you can actually see a couple of the peaks, Arrow and Vestal. Once you go behind the Beaver Pond, you get into very rough territory. So the first thing you get to is this very, very steep dirt non-trail that you have to go down. And once you get down, you have to cross this stream, which is okay. The trail that you need to take up to Vestal Basin is not very well maintained. So you're going over and under logs, but you're rewarded at the end by this view of the peaks. So this is actually Wham Ridge. This is Vestal Peak, but this is Wham Ridge. If you climb it, you basically climb up to about here, you go over here, and then you go up to the top, and you rope up about here. This is Arrow Peak, and this is me climbing Arrow Peak. And these are some of the views from actually the top of Arrow Peak. So you can see, I think this is Jagged. This is Pigeon. These are some of the, I think, Chicago Basin 14ers. And actually, this is me a couple weeks ago on top of West Trinity. So I actually came back and did what's called the Trinity Traverse. And you can actually see Vestal and Arrow from the top of West Trinity. And so the same backpack with Travis, I also climbed Trinity Peak. So you get up really early in the morning. You're starting around 4:15. So you're starting in the dark, climbing up to a saddle. If you're just doing Trinity, which we decided was the best thing because the weather might have been coming in, and it did, you actually traverse for about a mile on the back side, on the south side of the Trinities, through a lot of talus, which isn't very fun. And then you climb up a couloir, which is filled with talus, which is also not that much fun. But finally I got to the top. I was all ready for lunch, and we saw the weather coming in, and it's like, no, we can't stop. Take a picture and head down. This is actually a picture. So this is a picture of me on top of Trinity, which was my Centennial finisher. I don't look very happy because I'm not going to get to eat lunch. And actually, this is me a couple weeks ago getting to the top of East Trinity. And the reason I have this picture here is you can see this is what you go down from the top. This is the top of Trinity, and you actually go down this. You go down something like this, and at some point you turn left and go down this. So it is pretty steep and pretty loose. And yeah. So I'm basically done, but I have a couple of things I was going to try with you guys. So this is interactive. I've got 2 peaks here. This is the first one. So I'm on top of a peak, and behind me I'm on top of a Centennial, and behind me is this is a Centennial. Behind me is a 14er. So does anyone, I was hoping someone could guess. No. Oh, he said Handies. No, not Belford. No, not Missouri. No, not Oxford. All right, so this is actually, let's see. This is actually Culebra, so you can see kind of the kind of snake-like, because Culebra means snake in Spanish. You can see the snake-like ridge, and I'm on top of Red Mountain. Okay, so this one might be easier. So this is Stewart on top of a peak, and this is a 14er behind him. No. Look at the rock. Yes, pyramid. It's pyramid. Okay, cool. This is Thunder Pyramid, and this is Pyramid. Yes. So anyway, okay. I thought that would be fun, but maybe not. Okay, so anyway, that's all I have. I wanted to thank everyone who helped me climb the Centennials. So Anna and Daniel, my kids, you know, Daniel did a couple of them with me. Anna actually led Stuart and I up Tea Kettle, which is technical, even though it no longer is a Centennial. She also climbed North Apostle with me. Ron was just a saint, getting us up Jagged. We also did a failed climb up Vestal, but it was actually pretty fun. Norbert has led me on a couple of. I've actually climbed with Norbert on a couple of peaks. The Mountaineers. I did climbing school with the Mountaineers. My guides, Cam, Nate, and Travis, they were really great to climb with. And most of all, Stuart was wonderful. He was very patient. And when he couldn't do things, he supported me. So anyway, I wanted to thank everybody. So questions?
Toni, you mentioned doing at least one solo, maybe more. How many do you feel comfortable? I mean, we have weather and conditions that, like, yeah, you could consider solo with this on the terrain.
So the question is, what would I feel comfortable with doing solo?
How many? Yeah.
Well, so the only Centennial I did solo was Emerald. I actually did North Maroon solo, but it was my second time up it. I think a lot of the 14ers, if there's a trail to the top, I would probably feel comfortable doing them solo. In terms of the Centennials, of the ones I showed you, certainly Mount Ouray I would do solo, although I did hurt myself on that one. Probably Hagerman I would feel comfortable with, except I'm not sure I could get to the trailhead because you really do need a serious four-wheel drive. There's several of them that are more straightforward, like that I would feel, the ones that are kind of class 2, I would feel mostly comfortable with. Yeah. Yes?
What's next, Toni? The biennial?
No, so the question, I knew that was going to come. What's next? No, I'm not going to do the biennials. There are too many of them and they're too hard. Stuart and I are supposed to climb Kilimanjaro next June. We'll see if that's going to happen. But more, I think I'm going to do more just backpacking and things like that. Yeah. Yes, Martin?
So I wondered if you could climbing great at 5, 6, 5, 7, whatever, what's the hardest thing?
Yeah. So what is the hardest thing that I encountered? So I think the hardest one was doing Wham Ridge on Vestal, which is 5-4. We actually did part of it with Ron, who actually deviated a little bit and went up part of it that was 5-6. But I would say recently I did this Trinity Traverse, And even though it was rated class 4, I would say there were things there were parts of that were class 5 too. Other questions?
You were actually on a lot of 5, 6 stuff on jagged that failed at 7, 5.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, we did. Our first attempt on jagged, the guide was just didn't know what he was doing. So.
Okay, there's just a few questions online, and feel free to raise your hand in the room too if you have more. But someone asked, what was your favorite of the Centennial Peaks and why?
Yeah, that's a hard question. You know, I actually like the peaks from Vestal Basin because they're challenging and they're beautiful and they're wild. So you know, it was really fun going up Wham Ridge, although there's a horrible scree slope you have to come down, which I didn't like. Arrow is very nice. It's just a little tricky, but not too tricky. And then the Trinity Traverse, not Trinity itself, because that was just too much talus, but the Traverse, which has, you know, these technical sections, was very fun, although it was very long and for me hard.
Okay, someone wants to know, what was your typical schedule to climb the peaks in Colorado? So when did you leave Los Alamos, get to the trailhead, get home? I guess, you know, nights in between or at the trailhead?
Well, it kind of depended. Some of these are backpacks, which could take several days. You know, a lot of them, if it's a single day, we would typically, sometimes we would stay in a hotel, sometimes we'd camp at the trailhead. So, you know, it would at least take 3 days going up, you know, a day to get up there, a day to climb, a day to come back. But if you're doing a backpack, it could take a lot longer. It's actually more fun if you take longer and you don't try to rush, as I've noticed once I've been retired.
Okay, anybody else in the room or online? If you're typing online, you can just keep typing. I'll keep watching on the chat. But if those are all the questions from viewers, I just want to say thank you again, Toni, for sharing your so many trips with us tonight. Those are great stories and achievements. Congratulations. Everybody, please remember to look out for that quick survey coming to your email. And check the Peak website for some great programming coming up this fall and winter, including some great outings, our partnership outings with the Mountaineers. Our annual Peaknik is on October 12th. It's a big party everybody's welcome to on that Saturday afternoon, October 12th. And some fun Halloween events at the end of October. So thanks everybody again for joining us and have a good night.